Good afternoon, friends. Bill here with Sportsman Outreach. Hope you're having a good week and a good weekend. We're having one here, getting ready to, Lord willing, leave 9 of us heading over to London this Thursday and Friday for a good 10 days over there on the streets of the historic city of London, England. There's two NFL games. Well, the NFL's playing games on two Sundays at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is a great place to preach. There's a game at Arsenal, the famous Emirates Stadium where the Arsenal plays around by where we stay, and then a new stadium, Stamford Bridge. Plus, really the beauty of London is just the people in the streets everywhere. 8 million people all on their feet. They all ride the tube. It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. It's an open air preacher's dream. It's so many people from different places. They speak 300 languages there. And hey, Heath, how you doing? And it's just unbelievable. So we're going heading out. So looking forward to that trip, and then last weekend, just the Sportsman Outreach preaching going on. So it's exciting. The gospel is being preached in the United States in a multitude of ways by different people, different groups. So it's an exciting time to be alive and be a open air preacher. We certainly wish and pray that our brethren would join us in the endeavor just for the sheer thrill of preaching and teaching the Bible in the open air. But let me bring on an old friend. I'm not sure how well behaved he'll be on this technology. He lives out in the woods. His bears are his friends. He has a congregation of a critter congregation, you might say. But our old friend Mark Yoho coming on here, a Super Bowl outreach team leader. Give it a second.
Hey, Bill.
Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
You got Is the fire? I'm just curious. Does the fire heat the house, or do y'all have electricity yet? What's going on down there in the North Georgia mountains?
Oh, no. I've got a good friend named Andy. He said that I would lose ratings if I didn't have a fireside chat. He wouldn't watch, so I didn't want to offend him. So I set up this fireside chat. I'm sitting here sweating just so I don't offend my friend Andy. But hi, Andy.
Andy Smelser, he's kind of soft, isn't he? We won't talk behind his back much, but he's gotten soft. He's gotten old, and he's gotten soft. Well, it's good to see you're not soft anymore. What's going on today? How's the congregation? Do they like the cold weather?
Well, yeah, that's when they get frisky. Start moving around, doing other things. So, yeah.
So obviously you have more than one meeting with the congregation. So tell the folks here, what time do you normally have the daily meetings, and what kind of goes on there?
Well, we usually start before daylight and, preach till they behave. Sometimes it takes a while.
And church discipline, how do you administer church discipline?
Shotgun.
Okay. Do they recognize a shotgun? Yeah. They just know the sound of it.
Oh yeah, they know what it means.
All right, man. Well, cool. Well, it's good to be with you again. What a treat.
Good to be with you, Bill.
So give us an update here. You've got a lot going on. Talk first about the track riding and the 700 tracks going out. Tell us about that. That's exciting.
I had a young deacon in my church that decided he wanted to track for the church several years ago. So I started pointing him in the right direction, and things didn't really happen. So I got together with him and the pastor of the church and the youth minister, and we started working together to write a gospel track. We come up with it. This is my new gospel track. It's basically a Romans Road gospel track. Okay. The pastor said he liked to share the gospel with the Romans Road, and so we wrote it and we all worked together. This is probably a project that took, working together with the church and several people. It took us probably 7-8 months before we actually went to print with it, but real excited about it. Was able to pick some up the other day. I took a version of it and I put the church's information on the back, and then I took the other version that just had a call number on the back so they could call, so I could distribute them wherever. So I've got a good portion of them, handed out about 700 the other night, took some down to the Georgia Tech game. So really excited about the new track going out.
So did you find, and seriously, seriousness, did you find in the process of writing a track for the church that something extra happened as a result? You got people engaged, more people willing to give it out, stuff like that. What'd you find out?
Well, it was definitely a uniting of the evangelist and the pastor. It was definitely a connection that was helpful and beneficial in the work of the ministry. It's something that the pastor's proud of. He can't wait. We haven't really even we haven't got them back in the printer yet. Hope to get them back probably tomorrow or the next day. But pastor's proud of it. He's been announcing it to the church. So it was definitely a benefit to the relationship between the pastor and the evangelist. And that was I've always tried to keep a close relationship with my pastor, and that was just one other means of trying to keep the connection close.
That's a good way. That's a good. Let's talk about that for just a second. So you, um, now, we've talked before, but tell everyone today sort of what your, let's just call it like this, your ministry vocation is, and then we can talk about what you just talked about.
I'm a full-time vocational evangelist. 2002, I answered the call to preach. Saved in 98, answered the call to preach in 2002. 2007, I quit my job and went full-time into the ministry as an evangelist. Never pastored a church. My church that I was in at the time ordained me. My pastor did. Supported our ministry, loved our ministry. And so that's kind of where our ministry started out. And then we began seeing doors open for us to do ministry with other ministries on the street and various things. And God began connecting me with the people all across the country to do ministry. And so God's kind of put together a unique ministry, if you will, where we're full-time vocational, but we do a good bit of street ministry, but we also do a fair amount of pulpit ministry as well.
So you do pulpit ministry. You work fairs and help other people put stuff on, right? And preach revivals,
Right.
Yeah. Things. It's all evangelistic in its core, but the shape varies.
Right. And there are times when we do supply preaching for pastors. Pastors call me last minute, Sunday morning, they're sick, and they call me. And so we'll do some of that. We'll do evangelistic meetings, vacation Bible schools, help set up events and outreaches for like fall festivals and various things for churches. I'm helping a pastor. We're going to set up an outreach at the Moonshine Festival over in Dawsonville. He wants to set up a booth. And in those things, it's kind of neat because you get a chance to work with church people. You get the chance to do that part of the perfecting of the saints, the equipping people for the work of the evangelism. So it's kind of unique.
That's cool. All right. So since I know the story a little bit, you said you developed a relationship with your pastor. Now at the other church, the one in Dalton you told me about, just describe that relationship and what he ultimately does for you every Wednesday. Just so talk about that.
Going back a little bit farther, the church where I was saved in, I answered the call to preach, and they ordained me. That pastor got sick, and he had to step down from his ministry. And it was during that time that God really spoke to me about my need to support my pastor. So when he stepped down, and we relocated to another church in Dalton, Georgia, and I went in there and I started supporting my pastor, praying for my pastor, just sitting down and just chatting with him, not really trying to feel him out or anything, just being a friend to him, praying for him, doing anything he asked me to do as far as ministry work goes. Anytime he asked me, and then it's come to a place where God was doing a unique work of people were stepping up into ministry and going into the mission field and stuff. And so the pastor developed something he calls Missions Connection, where he reached out to missionaries that are connected to the church, and every Wednesday, and gets prayer requests from them. and then the church prays for him on Wednesday night. So that's been going on he started that before we left the church up there and joined down here in Sugar Valley. So it's probably been going on for about 6 years. Every Wednesday I get a text from the pastor, and he asked me for updates on our ministry. So, and the church prays for us.
That's so cool. So how did you, like, when you on that point about the shift, you supporting the pastor, that what was your your view before and after when serving the pastor? The Lord spoke to you. Did you learn, but did you have an idea at the moment what that meant?
No, not really. But it basically meant, I found out, it basically meant being the best church you can be, being a friend to your pastor. And I realized in the work of the evangelist, my former pastor used to say, Mark's not a very good church member. Basically what he was saying, he's not here very often. but that, and during COVID, I found out my pastor was very discouraged, like all pastors were. And so I just started calling him once a week. Hey, how you doing? How's it going with you? Anything I can help you with, or anything I can pray for you about? And, just being a friend to my pastor. And my current pastor, we've been there 5 years, I guess. And he made the comment the last time he asked me to preach. He says, he said, I can trust you to put you in my pulpit and never have to worry about anything that you do in the ministry. And so, I mean, that's a great vote of confidence from your pastor. And that's what I want. That's what I desire. So, basically what it looked like being a good church member and being a friend to your pastor.
Did you resist that, or did you say, yeah, glad to do it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard when God kicks you in the pants, and tells you need to straighten up. But, once I got it, it was good. I can't say there was resistance after that.
So in your work too with the North American Mission Board, and during that journey, did you see a lot of, because y'all, the SBC you have an evangelistic position in the body, did you see that relationship often in churches, or not often, or in certain churches, or because of certain evangelists?
Well, when I first went into the ministry, it wasn't uncommon to see a staff evangelist on, or a missions pastor, or something of the nature, someone that was helping the pastor to conduct the work of the ministry as far as evangelism and outreach goes. And so, when I was working with the mission board, I saw both. I saw good relationships happening, and then I saw pastors who at one time had a bad experience with an evangelist, and it really became a burden of mine to really work to help restore the office of the evangelist. And that's been a goal of mine for a long time. And you really can't do that unless you're connecting with pastors and being relational with them, and doing what you can to help them out too.
Gotcha. That's a good point. So just before we move on from that point, elaborate on that. So if you're telling young evangelists what to do, or how, not necessarily what or how to do it, or what the goal is, just make a couple of statements about that. What is the goal in having a good relationship? What are we trying to do? How do we do it? And where does our work end and their work begin, kind of stuff?
Well, number one, I think it's an issue of authority. The young evangelist needs to understand that the pastor is not subject to the evangelist's authority. There is a pastoral authority that is permeates the church, and we've got to understand that we are under the pastor's authority. We are members of the church, and he is the shepherd of the church. That's the first thing I would say to the young evangelist. And secondly, I'd say, that the work of the ministry that you have to do as an evangelist, yes, has to do with engaging the lost and reaching the lost through evangelistic efforts. But you also have part of the calling in Ephesians 4:11 and 12 for the perfecting of the saints. And so there is a portion of what it looks like for the evangelist to be working within the body somewhere, somehow. What does that look like? I can't tell you. You need to figure that out for yourself. How does your ministry fit into the ministry of your church and ministry of your pastor? And then, I guess I would say the final thing I'd say is, don't be discouraged in the work of the ministry. I see too many guys who get discouraged or disgruntled because they're not getting recognition, or they're not getting any people to come alongside of them to help them, or they're not seeing people involved from their church. Just press on. You've got an audience of one that you have to please, and that's the Father in heaven. So you just press on and let God build your team of people that you can work with. So
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. Good job, Mark. That's good. Very good. Well, cool. So moving on, you've written a track. Now you're also in school, or you're teaching a class in a nearby seminary Bible college. Is that correct?
it is correct.
So tell me why you're
I've been
taking
attending.
classes, what you're doing.
When I was first saved I was at the age of 33. I would probably call myself, I definitely was biblically illiterate. And so somebody came along in my workplace and offered, hey, my church is offering seminary classes. Would you like to come? So I, went and signed up, and I began learning and growing. And that was another means for me to be able to connect with other pastors and other people in the ministry. This is before I realized I was an evangelist or sensed the call to the ministry. And so I really enjoyed it. I'm not a electronic. I'm not a online class person. I'm an in-person class. And so when that was Covington Theological Seminary, they're out of Rossville, Georgia, right above here. The seminary extension came to our area, took classes through seminary extension. Again, was building relationships with pastors, really growing in my knowledge and wisdom. And both of those went away. So there's just one thing I have in my area now is a little independent school. And I've been attending there. This little church has been supporting me for as long as I've been in ministry. So that's kind of another God thing, but they've been supporting me, and they started a little Bible college over there, and signed up, started going. And then last year, the professor asked me to write a college lesson on the book of Romans. So I've been teaching the book of Romans, and so it's quite an experience. So.
That's cool. So what have you learned by teaching Romans that you either did not know before, or you learned how to do a certain skill in teaching the text?
In my preaching as an evangelist, I generally preach a text. I don't preach expositorily. What I mean by that is verse by verse, chapter by chapter. And so what this brought me to a verse by verse, chapter by chapter interpretation of the text. It brought me to study texts that I wouldn't normally study to preach, like Romans 14, Romans 11, those various chapters, and even down to like Romans chapter 16, where Paul's giving all his salutations. So it brought me to an understanding of, or a greater appreciation of the totality of Scripture, if you will. Not that I didn't believe that Scripture was inerrant, but like I said, there were just certain texts that you would study to preach evangelistically, and so I really didn't dive into those other texts. But this forced me to do that. Brought me a greater appreciation of the totality of Scripture, I guess you could say.
That's good. Did you well, learn things, something that surprised you or that you apply in your preaching that you did before? I mean, obviously that's going to come about, but something that you really did not anticipate.
Talking about the whole book of Romans here.
That's
Uh,
what I'm saying. Just one or two things like, wow, I would have never thought. Like, in other words, like maybe the better question is how you saw part of Romans that you knew or were familiar with, how to apply it evangelistically. Did you start to see stuff like that?
um, I guess there's two standouts that I would probably like to mention. Is one is like Romans chapter 7, as I began studying it, and I've heard it being mentioned numerous times. When I would do good, evil is present with me, and all that Paul says. And uh, a lot of people have misunderstood that. But what Paul's dealing with there is, when you subject your flesh to the law, uh, then there's this your flesh is rebellious. It's going to rebel against the law. And so he's not saying the fact that you're always going to have this battle, and that's why I've heard it preached numerous times that you're always going to have this battle. But as long as the answer is Romans chapter 8. When you walk in the Spirit, you'll not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And then another thing would be like Romans chapter 14 really spoke at to me about Christian liberties. Uh, about Paul is dealing with the fact that you have the mature Christian who is engaged in his Christian liberties, and he has no guilt of conscience. And then you've got the immature Christian who is offended by the fact that the other one is exercising their Christian liberties. And so that whole thing really speaks to the whole realm of bringing unity in the body of Christ. It's not wrong for the mature Christian to practice their Christian liberties, but if it offends somebody, the whole thing is the supremacy of the whole text is about the unity of the body. And so it's really a good study for me on both of those.
That's interesting. That's good, man. That's good. That's good. Well, it's striking. You learn the like the law thing. One thing about Romans, it talks about being divorced from the law, and you gain an understanding. Even back in Galatians, how does the law work? Not just not just, but just how does the law work in general? Not in terms of a covenantal sense, but if you put yourself under the law, it's going to produce works of the flesh, right? It's kind of an automatic. It's not like complicated, but we don't typically hear that, right? You typically hear something
Right.
like you're saying, and so I think that's a really interesting point, including the idea you cannot separate yourself from the law because you want to. You're stuck. Like it's with you all the time, and that's what the analogy is. And so that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. Yeah, that's good. Very good. Do your students, are they responding to your teaching? Because you spend a lot of time on this. We've talked about it.
Yeah, I did Romans 1 through 8 last year, and then we're doing 9 through 16 this year.
Gotcha.
About 8 weeks each time. But the 8 weeks that I teach it really is nothing compared to what it took me to prepare the lesson. I bet I've got 3 months in each section. Just day after day, just sitting studying the text, trying to make sure you got it right, going into word studies and there are various other studies to try to make sure your interpretation is true, right? So yeah,
So
quite a bit of time to it.
one more question on that, out of curiosity, what do you think? Like, if you had to give a percentage of what you can glean through repeatedly reading the text versus, and then you couple in reading commentaries or other opinions, how over your time of study do you see maybe a division of not time, or how do you see that? Half and half, 3/4, 10? How do you see that to really bring you to a place when you have a contentment with what you are saying the text means?
Uh, I think, for us to be able to preach a text, we need to know the text. Yeah, the only way we're going to know the text is for us to study the text, read the text over and over and over. When I've got time, I don't always have time. Sometimes I get calls. Sometimes I get like a call on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday and say, "Hey, can you preach for me?" And I don't have a lot of time at that point. And so I pretty much, I'll read the text a time or two and get into the study of the text. But when I've got time, I try to understand the text, and not only the text, but the context. How does the text fit into the context? And then you take it into the totality of the scripture, and you've got to understand that. And so understanding those things really is beneficial when you begin uh, to convey the text to the people. Because your goal is, when you're preaching in a church, you've got the mature believer, and you've got the immature and the unsaved in the church as well. And so the goal is to give enough depth to feed the mature believer without drowning the immature believer in theological works or understanding. So you've got to be able to know the text inside and out to be able to do that.
That's your point. That's good. Good stuff. We can talk about that forever. Well, cool. All right, man. Anything else before we talk about the Super Bowl you want to share?
No. Been good. Been a good year.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Let's talk about the Super Bowl. And what do you think this year? We were in Las Vegas. Well, first of all, is this your fifth year to be a team leader? How many years have you done it?
Probably is fifth year. Yeah.
Okay. So you had been to the Super Bowl. I think I saw you. You saw us back in New Orleans. So you've been going a while, right? So
Right. Yeah.
what do you think is, just in generically, the Super itself, which just has an attraction to people to attend? What do you think it is? Not the evangelist, but the fan.
You kind of broke up on me there. What was it you said?
What is it? What from your vantage point, having been to Super Bowls, with us and without us, what do you think it is about the Super Bowl which compels fans to attend? Why are there people there?
People just like to be in the mix of things. I mean, it's anywhere you go, anytime there's a big event going on, people like to be there. And the Super Bowl is really uh, one of the biggest events that is put on in America, and so it draws a huge crowd. And so I think that's why it draws it. I mean, even the local people that don't have tickets, they just like to be around the festivities. Maybe you'll see a football player, or maybe you can get some free stuff or whatever. So the NFL does a great job of doing things to attract people to those various events because it's profitable to them.
That's a good point. Okay, cool. That's good. That's good. Because all these cities are so different. Wouldn't you think? Like, after all these years, from New Orleans
Yeah.
to Phoenix, it's just pretty interesting. But the dynamic's the same. People come, right? That it hasn't changed so far, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Las Vegas. We were there Labor Day weekend. Tell us about what you see as the ministry opportunities that Las Vegas presents that are both unique to Las Vegas and something we should, in a sense, look forward to.
Las Vegas is unique in that it's not a very big city geographically. Population wise, I'm not really sure what the demographics are of the city, but it does provide a unique opportunity in that it is so compact. You got the Vegas Strip, and then on the other side of this, then the interstate runs parallel with the Strip. On the other side of the interstate is the stadium, and I believe it's the south end of the Strip is the convention center. There's another convention center on the other end of the Strip, and so everything is like really compact. So I anticipate the Super Bowl events, uh, parties and whatever's going to happen, but in a very condensed area. So it really is exciting because I think it's going to give us a lot of opportunity to interact with a lot of people, even more so than what we have seen in the past because of the density of the people that are going to be in that area. And not only that, you get down on the strip and the hotels are massive. So they can really house a lot of people in a small area in the downtown, in that strip area.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. The density, the consistency of the of the foot traffic is really unexpected. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, right,
Yeah, it's
right. I've never been to a city where the foot traffic is so heavy that they put bridges over the strip. There's
that's
bridges
true.
over the strip.
Yeah,
There's no, I mean, there's very few crosswalks. So that, I mean, when you start seeing that, you know you're dealing with a lot of foot traffic,
yeah,
and that's even before the Super Bowl even gets there. So I think we're really going to be dealing with a lot of people.
it should be good. Yeah, getting down by that stadium, if they block that off some anyway, um, down by what's that Mandalay Bay, it'll be a zoo.
Right.
It could be a zoo down there. I think the odd thing too about that, especially the stadium, is that parking is a challenge. They haven't really. I'm surprised. So they're going to generate a lot of foot traffic for us because of the way they've laid it all out, right? Uh,
Right.
that's pretty interesting. Well, good. What else did you see out there that you caught your attention? Like a lot of foot traffic. Anything else that would be just inviting for us to go out there and preach and evangelize?
I saw. Well, it was one of the cities where we really didn't have a lot of problem with law enforcement. In fact, I'm pretty sure we didn't have any problem with law enforcement at all while we were there, and the numerous times that we were out on the street. Secondly, uh, the city has the sidewalks are so wide. There's plenty of room to set up and preach. And I mean, there's just a few places where the sidewalks are narrow on the upper end of the strip up there, but for the most part, sidewalks are wide, and you really don't have to worry about people stomping all over you because you got plenty of room to set up. There's little cubbies set up where you can just um, create you a little ministry center, if you will. There made a really unique situation. Temperature's going to be right. It's going to be like Phoenix was in the 70s, maybe in the 80s. So we're looking at good weather while we're there. Usually they don't have a lot of rain. Just an ideal location for us to go and do ministry. And, another thing is, you and I, we went out there early, and we met with some locals. We met with somebody from the state convention and there's already a stirring among the people out there to
Yeah,
do something to engage this crowd that's coming.
yeah,
And so that was really a good indicator for me that God was already on the ground doing something before we ever got there. So those are the kind of little indicators I look for, and make it exciting. It'd be a worthwhile trip for anybody that wanted to or was considering going.
yeah. I think the thing too is that Las Vegas, what if you've never been, you might have this image that it's just what's it, full of a lot of imagery, but that's not true. We didn't really see visually anything that's distracting, basically, compared to what you might anticipate. So it's a fairly clean environment, at least visually speaking. Would you agree with that? So that's nothing to be afraid of. I was surprised by that.
I mean, we saw one area that was questionable whether it's family
Oh,
friendly or not, but for the most part, I mean, the anywhere you went was family friendly.
yeah,
That we didn't have uh, all the thing you hear about Vegas. All you hear about is the prostitution that goes on the strip and everything. And but we really didn't encounter anything like that. Uh, like I said, very family friendly. They have a lot of things for families out there as far as to draw the crowd and everything. So I don't anticipate a lot of problems with stuff like that.
That should be good. That's good. Well, cool. So the topics. Let's talk about the topics for the year for the teaching. And what's your teaching on this year?
Well, this year we're trying to pull together the teachings from the previous 2 to 3 years, where we've been talking about the office of the evangelist and restoring the office of the evangelist. And that's my teaching this year, is restoring the office of the evangelist. How we, the evangelists, can do our part to restore the office of the evangelist to the church. And, it's not something that we can leave to others. If we're the evangelist, I think we're responsible for doing our part, for doing what's necessary to restore the office of the evangelist and build relationships with pastors, build relationships with churches, and get busy doing what we're supposed to be doing for the equipping of the saints in the work of the ministry. So my teaching is it's based on a lot of experience, things that I've noticed in my ministry, things that has happened. My teaching is going to be a lot of scriptural teaching as well, applying scripture to it to back up my points. And so I'm excited about it. I really think it's going to be a good time and good teaching this year. I look for good things to happen as a result of it as well.
You mean people taking what you're saying and taking it home with them?
Yes, that's my hope.
So do you think I think so, but do you think we've done a good job sort of the last 2 years, this will be the third, in sort of discussing the whole topic of the evangelist? Have we left anything out? Or is this going to be a good comprehensive conclusion?
I think it's going to be a good conclusion, because we've got some of the men are talking on historical figures and how they connected with the church, even in the times when the church was hostile towards the evangelist. We see the various folks who were doing the work of the evangelist, but yet they still had some church connection. They were still doing their part to keep the office of the evangelist connected to that part. And then several of us are talking about how to get the office of the evangelist recognized in your church, or maybe gain some sort of favor in your church. So the two together are going to meld together in a unique way to help us all become better evangelists and reconnect the office back to the church, and not just be these lone rangers out here shooting up the countryside.
That's a good way to say. We didn't really have a title exactly, but you might say doing the work of the evangelist while connected to the church, or be connected to the church and doing the work of the evangelist. One of the two. Either way, he's kind of saying the same thing, isn't it?
Right.
But that's really what we're trying to accomplish, trying to bring it all together. And like you just said, like what you're saying and the other historical examples, because they're all connected to the church in various ways. So that's a good way to think about what the topic is. And that's what we've been talking about. I think we're all under agreement that the church is, I think you said it or implied it, Mark, that church, if the evangelist is not involved in the leadership in a sense, the church is not perfected. There's a lack, there's going to miss something. And aren't you the one that said that? The maturity of it's going to be stunning.
I think I mentioned earlier about the evangelist being under the authority of the pastor. So
right. That's cool. Well, awesome, man. We'll look forward to it. Any other thoughts about Las Vegas or the Super Bowl, or reflecting on past Super Bowls, and anything you want to share?
Like I said, I'm excited about Vegas, the layout of the city. It's going to be a great outreach. we kind of really don't know what to expect as far as team goes. Las Vegas has its own draw without the Super Bowl even being there. So, I anticipate we could really use some really large teams to cover the city. I don't think there's going to be any problem with us trampling all over one another as we try to share the gospel. It is compact as far as it goes, but the massive amount of people that are going to be there is going to be an amazing thing.
Very amazing.
So, but I'm excited. Looking forward to what God's going to do. Bill, it's always been a prayer of mine for years. I took a mission trip to San Diego. God really spoke to my heart when I was getting on a plane. It was an evangelistic outreach. I sat on the plane, and I just kind of realized that I went there to change the city, but God changed me. So it's always been a prayer request of mine. That when I leave to go on a trip like this, God changed me.
All right.
And that's the goal, and that's the prayer that I have for any and all that will attend the Super Bowl outreach is God would change them as well.
That's cool. That's good. Good conclusion. Okay, Mark. Listen, good to be with you again as always. Tell the congregation hello, and we'll hope they get in order soon.
Well, I got this right there's my cooking grill. I got some beast of the earth that's going to go resting right there just in a few minutes.
That's funny. That's funny, man. Got to get David Day to come up there and do some live raccoon up there. You guys, just have a cooking show or something.
Yeah, I went up to my neighbors this morning and picked up some nice chestnuts. Chestnuts are going to be roasting on the open fire too.
That's good. The congregation Christmas party. That's great. I love it. Okay. All right, Mark. Have a good day, man. Good to be with you. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
Thanks, Bill.
Soon. Mark Yoho, man, we met. I'll tell us real quick. We were both up at the 2012, I guess, Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, and we both rode the megabus from Charlotte back to Atlanta. And Mark had met Robert Stockwell and Mike Stockwell, Robert Gray within the last month or so, and he gets off the megabus, and I'm getting off. And he just came up and said, "Hey, are you Bill?" And so we met right there. We rode the whole way back without knowing each other. But ever since we met back then, 2012, my gosh, 11 years, we've had a good time together. Been to London several times, and 5-time Super Bowl outreach team leader. Mark's a great guy. I love being with him. A lot of fun to be with and faithful to the task. So hope you enjoyed it. Listen, friends, once we load up this video, there'll be a place for the details and to register for the Super Bowl. So check back and hope you will pray about and plan to join us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.